Hey, hey, hey. Time for the Out of This World story from rSpace. 1 minute, it's let's handle this like reasonable adults. And the next, it's restraining orders, missed visitations, and surprise road trips to Miami while your kid wonders why his mom disappeared again. Today on rSpace, not so amicable separation. Cheating wife left me to be with tattoo artist affair partner. I won full custody and got them both arrested. When your life turns upside down, you never see it coming. I thought I could be prepared for anything, but the worst things in life really just come at you completely out of left field, and then everything changes forever. It feels unfair that this kind of thing can happen, and you're just expected to keep on with life. Drop your kid at school and go back to work the next day like your life isn't currently in pieces. Before she tore everything apart, I, 32 male, was married to Christine, 29 female, for 6 years. We have a 5-year-old son, Todd, together. The little guy is the light of my life. Sure, having him changed everything and we couldn't live the adventurous lifestyle we used to have, but being a father fulfilled me in so many other ways. I always thought Christine was the same. I thought she enjoyed being a mother, but over the last year, I started to realize that she wanted more. I'd noticed that she started pulling away from me. She didn't ask about my day, and if I tried to tell her about it, her eyes would glaze over and she'd zone out. She wasn't interested in anything I had to say. She wasn't really taking an interest in Todd's life either. Some days, I'd find out that she'd completely forgotten to feed him because she was too busy giggling with her friends on her phone. Then, there were her friends. I didn't have a problem with my wife having friends or anything, but I didn't like these people. Putting it simply, they were a bad influence on her. They were party girls who were pushing 30. They were tatted up with pierced faces. I don't know if I sound like an old man, but they made me uneasy. She was always on the phone with them or saying she wanted to go drinking with them. I had to remind her that she couldn't go out partying every night because she had a son and she'd spend the rest of the night sulking. One night she came home a little drunk and told me she wanted to show me something. It was a tattoo of a rabbit on her neck. Not something big, just an outline. But it stood out like a second nose. I wasn't happy about it and I told her so. We got into a fight and she accused me of being boring and trying to police her. I told her that she knew I didn't like tattoos, but the real problem was that she'd made a huge decision like that without informing me first. I just knew that it was her lousy friends who gave her the confidence to make such a move without telling me. I'd even have understood it better if the tattoo meant something, but a rabbit, and on such a visible part of her body? I was pissed. She insisted that it was her body and she didn't have to ask me for permission before she did anything. I told her that wasn't how it worked. We were married. We both needed to be involved in big decisions like that. I probably would have agreed in the end, even if I didn't like it. She huffed and told me that it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. The girls are all getting tattoos, so she got one too. I knew it. Suddenly, it made sense. I asked why she was so determined to be like a bunch of women who weren't doing anything with their lives, and we got into another fight. She said they were spontaneous and lived their lives the way that she did when she was young. I reminded her that she wasn't 21 anymore. Things changed when you grew up. She yelled back at me, saying I was trying to get her to live like an old woman. In the end, I had to live with it. I mean, it's a tattoo. It's not going anywhere. I didn't like it, but I got used to it. It's not like I had a choice, and I think it's extreme to choose divorce over an inoffensive tattoo. The day I found out that she'd picked Todd up late from school was the day I decided I'd had enough. It wasn't like she was busy or she couldn't get off work on time. She just completely neglected to pick him up. That day I waited until he was asleep and then I voiced all my frustrations. I kept my voice level, but I won't hide the fact that my language was pretty harsh. I told her she was neglecting her responsibilities as a mother. I called her a bad mom. Was it much? Probably. But I was trying to give her a jolt. I really wanted to shock her back to her senses. She ended up shocking me instead. When I told her she was a bad mother, she started crying. Then she told me that she was tired of being just a mom. She wanted to be a complete woman, one who still had fun and lived her life. I told her that she was allowed to live her life, but we had a responsibility to take care of the child that we chose to bring into the world. He was our number one priority. When he was fed, safe, and taken care of, then she could do whatever she wanted to live her life. But she wasn't listening. She told me that she was tired of being my wife. Not tired of being a wife, just tired of being mine. I was too strict. There were too many rules. We didn't live life like we used to. We weren't spontaneous. I looked at her in disbelief. Of course we couldn't be spontaneous. We had a 5-year-old son. We couldn't plan random trips anymore because he needed to be back in school by Monday. We couldn't party all night because he had school in the morning. but that didn't mean our relationship was dead. We still found time to go out once in a while. Sure, we had to get a babysitter first, but we still did it. If she wanted more, then we could work something out. That's what every other parent on the face of the earth has to do. She just shook her head and told me it was too late. Then she dropped the bomb on me. There was someone else. She'd been dating him for a few months now, and he made her feel the way she used to feel back when we were dating. I stared at her in silence for a while. I hadn't expected anything like this when I decided to confront her about neglecting her son. Was she telling me that she was cheating on me? She didn't wait for me to speak. Her voice broke when she told me that she wanted a divorce. I still couldn't answer. I had to sit down and process this information. When I finally got my thoughts together, all I could think was to ask who he was. She told me it was Rick. He was the guy who did her tattoo. She'd gotten his number and they kept in touch. He woke up the spark in her, and soon they were having a physical and emotional relationship. I just shook my head. I told her that was a lot of flowery language to say she was cheating on me. She sat beside me and put her hand on my leg. I took her hand off of me and told her to leave. I don't know if she felt like the fact that she had civility told me she was dating someone else was supposed to soften me up. I told her if she was done with me, then there wasn't any point in her being around a second longer. She didn't move and said we needed to discuss what we were going to do with Todd. I asked if she was serious. Todd was staying at home with me until the court made a decision. She frowned and said she was Todd's mother. Now I was mad. So I didn't care what I said. I said she was barely a mother. I asked if she was busy screwing Rick when she forgot to pick up her son that day. I told her it was final. I wasn't going to let her take Todd to stay with a man I'd never met before. She was crazy for even suggesting it. She was already neglecting him, and I wasn't going to let her take him somewhere where it would just get worse. Christine tried to keep arguing, but I shut her down. I told her that Todd wasn't leaving the house with her, and that was final. If she tried to take him, I'd call the police. I was dead serious about it, and she could tell. She kept trying to argue, but her heart wasn't in it anymore. She just said she would come by to see him when he came home from school the next day. What I didn't expect was for her to come with Rick. The next afternoon, they pulled up outside in a beat-up pickup truck. Rick stayed in the car while Christine came in. She didn't mention Rick, and I didn't ask. She talked to Todd and told him the same thing I did. Mom wasn't staying at home because we decided to live in different places. Sometimes grown-ups had to do that. We both still loved him very much. He was very confused, and it hurt me to watch. Christine didn't know he'd cried for half an hour before he went to school. He couldn't understand why Mom wasn't around. I took the promise of seeing her in the afternoon to get him to calm down. When it was time for Christine to leave, she told me that she'd be taking Todd with her. I reminded her of what I'd said the night before. She nodded and told me that she'd brought Rick so I could meet him. I told her I had no interest in meeting the man, and he wouldn't be raising my child. We were at the front door arguing at this point, and Rick got out of the car, walked up to us and said, "Is there a problem?" I said there would be a problem if they thought they could take Todd from his home. I got a good look at Rick for the first time, and I felt insulted that Christine thought this was an upgrade. He was shabby, his clothes were stained and ratty, and he smiled odd. His beard was well maintained, but his hair was a mess. He was covered in tattoos from his wrist up to his neck, and I could see some on his leg beneath his shorts. A few of them depicted nude women. Right away, I knew I didn't want him around my son. Rick said that Christine had maternal rights, and she could take him if she wanted. I told him there was no such thing. We both had equal rights, and I was exercising mine. I told Rick that this was a family matter, and I'd call the police if he took one step closer. He seemed pissed off that I'd challenge him like that, but he stepped back. He probably had a criminal record or some other reason he didn't want to deal with the police. He muttered something to Christine, and the two of them turned to leave. She's been back to see Todd a few times since then, and she usually comes without Rick. If he tags along, he stays in the car. The guy still makes me uneasy, and I'll fight tooth and nail for full custody just to keep my kid from growing up around him. I know that's me judging a book by its cover, but to be frank, I don't care. Todd hasn't been doing great with all of this, though. He used to be a lively kid, but he's quiet a lot of times now. It breaks my heart. I've tried to cheer him up, and it works for a few hours, but then he's back to being quiet. I'm at the end of my rope dealing with this. I hate Christine for what she did to me, and especially for what she's done to Todd. She broke our family apart because she was bored, and now it's up to me and a 5-year-old to pick up the pieces. As if wanting to feel like her old self justifies neglecting her own child and walking out on her marriage. I get that people grow and change, but you don't get to opt out of being a parent because it cramps your style. That's not spontaneity. That's just selfishness dressed up as self-discovery. Update. I got a lot of flack for some of my opinions in the first post. Yeah, I don't like tattoos. Sue me. But I don't think having a tattoo makes you a bad person or anything. I just think you can tell a lot about a person by the way they choose to put on their skin. And any man who would mark themselves with naked women isn't someone I want around my kid. I don't think that should be hard to understand. Anyway, let's start with the divorce. Christine insisted that she didn't want us to take things to court. She thought we'd be able to settle things with mediation. She claimed she didn't want much from me, and she wanted things to be amicable since we'd be co-parenting. So I let her know I wasn't planning on co-parenting. I didn't trust her. She had a history of neglecting Todd, and I wasn't going to sit around and let her expose my son to someone like Rick. She tried to convince me that they'd take good care of him, but my mind was made up. Then she just got mad. She said I had no right to claim full custody of Todd. He was her son too, and she'd fight to keep him. I told her to go ahead and try, and she did. She got some half-baked lawyer, while I got the very best one I could afford. I came in with all the documentation I could put together. I had texts of every time I'd checked in on Todd, and she'd forgotten to do something. I even got a signed statement from Todd's teachers testifying to the fact that she came in late, or didn't show up when it was her turn to pick him up. When I told my lawyer my suspicions about Rick, he did some research. It came out that Rick had a criminal record: driving under the influence, assault, resisting arrest, and multiple accounts of drug possession. I was surprised he was still free to walk the streets. Despite my increased fears at the thought of Todd living with this man, my lawyer assured me that this was good for us. The judge would almost definitely find it an unfit environment, especially if Christine insisted on living with Rick. My lawyer was right. Rick's record turned the entire thing in my favor. Christine tried to argue that he was changed, and he was clean now, but his most recent arrest wasn't too long ago. There was no evidence to support the notion of Rick being a changed man. The final nail in the coffin came when a social worker checked out the living environment that Christine and Rick would be providing. She declared their apartment unfit for raising a child, especially compared to the home that he was already living in. Rick's place was small, and Todd wouldn't have a room of his own. According to the social worker, the apartment was a mess, and it was located in a run-down building. The court awarded me full physical custody, stating that it was clear that I was a more capable parent than she was, mentally and financially. Christine was given weekly visiting rights, which was liable to change in the future, pending a review. She said she was going to appeal it, but that didn't go anywhere. Either she didn't have enough money to get a better lawyer to go through with it, or she just lost interest. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the latter, based on how she treated Todd after I got custody. At first, she came for all the visitation periods. She never came with Rick, which I wouldn't have stood for anyway. She'd come to spend her time with Todd, which genuinely seemed to help him. He started acting more like his normal self again, and it was a relief to see. But the visits slowly started becoming less frequent. One weekend, she said she was sick. The week after that, something came up at work. After that, there was no excuses and no appearances. She just stopped showing up, and it wrecked Todd. He'd gotten used to his mom's visits, and having her stop showing up made him withdraw again. It broke my heart. I hated having to do it, but I called her. I didn't like her, but she was his mom, and he needed to see her. When she didn't answer my calls, I went down to her apartment in person. I knocked on the door for 5 minutes and got no answer. I decided I would camp out in front of their place until they got back. I wanted answers. It didn't take long before an elderly woman poked her head out from the neighboring apartment to ask if I was looking for Christine and Rick. I told her I was, and she informed me that they'd left town. They'd gone on a trip with some friends to Miami. I couldn't believe it. She'd just gone without informing me? The very least she could have done was let us know she wouldn't be around for visitation. Now, Todd was wondering why his mom didn't want to see him anymore. That drove me over the edge. So I reported the missed visits and used them as additional evidence of neglect. We argued that she was emotionally distant and unfit to be alone with Todd. She was cut down to one supervised visit per week. When she got back, she let me know just how unhappy she was about that. She and Rick showed up one afternoon and started banging on the door, demanding that I come out. I peeked out from an upstairs window. The two of them seemed sloppy drunk. Was that the kind of life she had been missing out on so bad that she had to leave me and her son? I was just glad that Todd wasn't home at the time. He was spending the weekend with my parents. I didn't answer the door, especially since Rick was threatening to harm me. I just called the police and filmed them from upstairs. When the police arrived, they found Rick had a weapon on him. He swore he always carried it on him and he wasn't intending to use it on me, but there wasn't much reason to believe that, even if it was true. It didn't help that there was a motive for him to harm me and that he was heavily under the influence. He and Christine were both taken into custody, and I was questioned for a bit. I made sure the police saw the video I recorded. There was damage to the property as well. They'd broken the front door and smashed one of the windows. The cops asked if I wanted to press charges. Definitely. I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if Todd were at home. Now they're both facing some serious charges for destruction of property and making threats. But Rick was the worst of it. He was carrying a weapon after all, and he had clearly driven to the house under the influence. My lawyer said this might count as a third strike for him, and he could be going away for a long time. Christine will get off easier than he did, but she'll have a criminal record. I couldn't believe this was the same woman I'd married. She'd fallen so far, but this was what she wanted. She'd chosen it for herself. I didn't tell Todd that his mother was arrested. I simply told him that she wasn't well and that she needed to go somewhere to get better. She'd be fine and he'd see her again one day. I don't like lying to him, but I don't think he's old enough for the truth just yet. I think the worst part is that he didn't even cry. He just nodded, like he was used to this from her. It was heartbreaking. I'm doing my best to make sure Todd gets through all of this. I spend as much time as I can with him, and when I'm really busy, he stays with my parents. I just want to make sure he's always surrounded by people who actually love him. Every Friday, we have a game night where we get pizza and play whatever video game he wants together. It's usually Fortnite. He's slowly starting to become the happy kid he used to be, and I love it. He's not back to 100%, but I know I can't rush it. I'm not happy my marriage has to end, and I never wanted my family to break up. I didn't want to have to put my son through all of this, but I wasn't given a choice in how things turned out. All I knew was that I needed to protect my son, and I did the best I could. That was good enough for me. As for Christine, I hope she realizes exactly what she gave up just to chase the fantasy of being 21 again. It really isn't worth it. You don't owe anyone an apology for wanting to protect your son. You gave her every chance. You let her visit. You didn't badmouth her to Todd. You even tried to reach out when she started pulling away. That Friday game night tradition, that's going to stick with him. When he's older, he might not remember every detail of this mess, but he'll remember that you were there, showing up, making space for him to just be a kid. You didn't cause this. You responded to it. You did everything right, OP. Have you ever seen a peaceful divorce spiral into a full-on battle over custody and trust? Share your experiences with us in the comments. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.